Let's start this off with the LA Angels, and I think Mike Trout finally has a full healthy season. 2019 was the last season in which he played more than 130 games, but since then, it's been injury after injury after injury, and last year his season got cut short because of knee surgery. However, he's had a lot of time since then to rehab. Remember, that injury happened back in last April, and now he's going to be moving to right field, which should be a lot less demanding than it was out in center field, and I'm sure he's going to get a lot of DH time as well. A healthy Mike Trout is good for the game, and I think it finally happens this year. For the Astros, I think they eventually move Jose Altuve back to second base. So they've been experimenting with Altuve out in left field this spring, and he's definitely had his issues out there so far. I think eventually it's going to become too much of an issue, and they'll make a move for another outfielder at some point. Maybe someone like Luis Robert. On to the Athletics, and I think Osvaldo Bido ends up being their ace at some point. Sure, they signed Luis Severino this offseason for that role, but when you look at Bido's advanced metrics, there's a lot to like here. He limits the hard contact very well, ranks in the 99th percentile in average exit velocity, the 100th percentile in hard hit percentage, the 93rd percentile in barrel percentage. Now, I think you could use a bit of an improvement when it comes to the whiffs and the strikeouts, but when you take a look at his stuff plus numbers, these are all above league average. A 107 on the fastball, a 108 on the sinker, a 117 on the cutter, a 112 on the slider. I think there's a lot of good things with Bido coming up. For the Blue Jays, I think Vlad Jr. ends up getting traded. The Blue Jays did make some moves this offseason, but I'm still not very high on them as of right now. I think the offense as a whole is lacking, and I think the bullpen could still use a bit more. Even after bringing in Jeff Hoffman, the bullpen was very bad last year. I think with just all the competition in the American League East, it's going to be tough for this team to compete, and I think eventually Vlad is going to get moved. I think there will be a big bidding war for him. I could see Bo Bichette getting moved as well, maybe even Max Scherzer, maybe even Kevin Gausman. For the Braves, I think Chris Sale continues to dominate. He's coming off a Cy Young season at 35 years old, and it looked like he finally put his injury woes behind him last year. His stuff still ranks as some of the best in the game, and his advanced metrics still rank very well. I think he's going to keep pitching great. Kind of reminds me of Randy Johnson and how he dominated late in his career. On to the Brewers, and I say Joey Ortiz ends up being a top 10 shortstop. Now that Willy Adames is going to the Giants, Joey Ortiz is going to be the full-time shortstop. Now, last year he finished with a 3.1 F4, mainly due to his defense. The offense was lagging a little bit, but I think we're going to see an improvement there. As you can see, the plate discipline ranked very well with him last year, but the batted ball profile could definitely use a bit of an improvement. However, the bat speed did rank well last year, so I think that's going to lead to a better batted ball profile, along with the work that he's been doing in the offseason and in spring training. Now, last year, at number 10, you had Ezekiel Tovar with a 3.7 F4. I think Joey Ortiz can beat that. I think he ends up being a very good shortstop this year. For the Cardinals, I think they end up being massive sellers. Now, this past offseason, we thought the Cardinals were going to clear a lot of payroll. We thought they were going to clear out some playing time for some of the younger guys within the organization, and they ended up not doing anything. Nolan Arenado was a name we heard of a lot this past offseason. He ended up staying put. Wilson Contreras came up at one point. Sonny Gray came up earlier in the offseason until he didn't want to waive his no-trade clause. Eric Fetty popped up at one point. Ryan Helsley, we thought he was going to get moved, and they didn't do anything. I think the Cardinals, they're just not a very good team overall. They're going through a bit of a transition here. Chaim Bloom is going to be the new president of baseball operations after this coming season. So I say by the deadline, they clear out a lot of these players and they get the younger guys that playing time they're looking for. For the Cubs, I think Matt Shaw wins Rookie of the Year. You all know I'm a big Matt Shaw fan. He reminds me a lot of Dustin Pedroia, just a gritty player. He does a lot of things well, hits well, fields well, has speed. He put up great numbers in the minor leagues, over 600 ABs, hit 303 with a 384 on base, a 906 OPS overall, 29 homers, 46 stolen bases. I think this guy is going to have a great year for the Cubs. He's adapted very well to every level as he moved up through the organization. I think he's going to do the same thing in the major leagues. For the Diamondbacks, I think Corbin Burns and Zach Gallen end up being the best 1-2 punch in baseball. Now, there's a lot of good 1-2 punches in baseball right now. For the Dodgers, you could say Blake Snell and Yamamoto. For the Phillies, Wheeler and Nola. For the Braves, Chris Sale, Strider's coming back this year. You go to the Mariners, you got Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. On the Tigers, you got Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty. There's a lot of good ones, but I think the Diamondbacks end up having the best one. Now, Corbin Burns, we all know this guy is going to give you good production each and every year. There's no worry about him. But Gallen last year ended up taking a bit of a step back compared to his usual standards, but he did make some tweaks this past offseason. I think he's going to get back to those numbers that we saw in 2023. So I think Burns and Gallen will be the best 1-2 punch. For the Dodgers, I think they go back-to-back. If there's ever a time for a team to repeat for the first time since the Yankees in 98, 99, and 2000, it's the Dodgers. This team is absolutely stacked, and they have a lot of depth. They brought in a lot of guys this past offseason. You brought in Blake Snell and Roki Sasaki for the rotation. Yamamoto is going into year 2. He's going to be better than last year, I think. And don't forget, Shohei Ohtani is going to be coming back to the mound, so that's going to help out the pitching staff in itself. You're also going to be getting back Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May this year. They beefed up the bullpen with Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates. Hopefully, Michael Kopech comes back at some point, but if he doesn't, at least you added these two guys. And for the lineup, I mean, you got bats all over the place. You brought in Michael Conforto as well. I also think that is a bit of a prediction here as well. I think he's going to do very well for the Dodgers this year. His underlying metrics last year for the Giants were very solid, and he hit a lot better on the road last year. And the Dodgers, they have a good history of bringing guys in and getting more out of them. I think he's going to do very well here. You got some guys down in the minor leagues like Dalton Rushing, Alex Freeland as well that I think are knocking on the door to contribute at the major league level. I think there's just a lot of talent here. There's depth. I think the Dodgers are set up very well to go for a repeat. For the Giants, I think they end up having one of the best bullpens in baseball. I think the Giants' bullpen is being severely underrated here. Now, as of right now, they're ranked 23rd on Fangraphs, but you have a lot of good arms at the back end here. Ryan Walker was phenomenal this past year. Now, Camille Duvall had his struggles last year, but he was having trouble with his command. He's improved that this past offseason, had himself a good spring training, and his underlying metrics still look very good. I think he has a bounce-back season, gets back to what he was doing a couple of years ago. Eric Miller was very solid in the bullpen last year. He ate up a lot of innings. They brought in Tyler Rogers. He's very steady in a setup role. And Luke Trevino, look out for him, an underrated bounce-back candidate. And he was very good not too long ago. He's been dealing with injuries over the last couple of years, and he had a very good spring training as well. I think the Giants' bullpen is going to be very good this year. For the Guardians, I think Travis Bazzana ends up debuting this year. He was the number 1 pick in the draft last year, and for good reason. The talent is off the charts. He has an amazing bat, has a great hit tool, has some power as well. Good defense at second base, has a little bit of speed. I think he ends up finding his way to the Guardians this year. Now, small sample size in the minor leagues last year, 101 ABs, only hit 238, but had a 369 on base. That's very good in his first year of pro ball, and he did okay this spring, 7 games overall, only hit 167, but had a 375 on base, a 500 on the slugging, had a homer as well. And when it comes to the Guardians right now, you got Gabriel Arias at second base. I like the glove with him, but there's not really a whole lot with the bat. I think Bazzana is going to make his way through the minor league system this year, and I think he ends up debuting. For the Mariners, I think they end up having a top 10 offense and maybe even finish in the top 5. Now, last year, the big problem for the Mariners was the offense. They led the major leagues in strikeouts. They had a tough time getting on base. They ended up firing Scott Service as the manager, and they switched to Dan Wilson. They even brought in Edgar Martinez to lead the way when it came to the hitting department, and they saw a lot of improvements. Now, in the first half last year, they ranked 18th in offense overall, but in the second half, they ranked 5th overall. So you did see a big improvement there, and I really like a lot of the bats here. Obviously, Julio Rodriguez, he heated up in the second half as well. I think he's going to have a more consistent year this year. J.P. Crawford, I think he's going to be a bounce-back candidate. You know, you bring in someone like Rowdy Tellez. Hopefully, Jorge Polanco is healthier this coming year. Now, they did release Mitch Haniger, but let's see if they can get a bit more out of Mitch Garver, who ended up being pretty bad for them last year. Maybe even someone like Ryan Bliss can contribute a little bit to this lineup. You're going to get a full season of Randy Rosarena. He did better after going to the Mariners last year. And let's see if Victor Robles can keep up what he was doing last year. I think there's a lot of good things going for this Mariners offense. I think they're going to be a lot better, and I think they're going to be pretty surprising. For the Marlins, I'll go with an easy one. I think they get an absolute haul for Sandy Alcantara. Now, he's coming back from Tommy John this year, and I think he's going to get back to what he was doing over the last several years. Now, when it comes to Sandy Alcantara, we all know this guy can be one of the best pitchers in the game, but he's also on a team-friendly contract, a 5-year, $56 million deal with a club option for 2027. I think whoever ends up getting Alcantara is going to have to give up a massive package. I could see the Orioles. Maybe you could do something with either Sammy Basayo, maybe Kobe Mayo could be involved in a deal like that. Whatever it ends up being, I think the Marlins are going to get a heck of a package for this guy. For the Mets, I think Clay Holmes ends up being a top 20 pitcher. Now, I'm going to go a bit bold here, but I think he can have a lot of success as a starter. I know a lot of people were joking about this move because he was a reliever his entire career, but I think the underlying metrics suggest that he can end up being a very good starter. He limits the hard contact. He has good velo, good expected numbers as well. I think he could do a little bit better with the chase percentage, but he did also add a changeup to his repertoire this year. He has good stuff. I think it's going to play very well. If we take a look at who ranked in the 20th spot last year, you had Tanner Bybee with a 3.3 F-WAR. I think Clay Holmes can do that. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people this year. Now, another prediction I have is that I'm going to find a great deal on baseball tickets, and that's with today's sponsor, SeatGeek. There's a reason they have over 28 million downloads and are considered the #1 rated ticketing app out there because they do a great job at finding you a great deal. With baseball season just around the corner, SeatGeek has your back as each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. Now, for me personally, there's been plenty of times I've used SeatGeek to find a good deal on Red Sox tickets, whether that's at Fenway Park or even visiting other stadiums. And you know I came through for you fellas. You could use the code HYDE for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek right now. That's $20 off your first purchase with the promo code HYDE. Make sure you click the link in the description down below to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. With that said, let's get back to the video. For the Nationals, I think MacKenzie Gore ends up being a top 10 pitcher. Now, when it came to Gore last year, he took a big step forward, 32 starts, 166 and a third innings pitched, ERA at a 3.90, FIP at a 3.53, still had a good amount of strikeouts. He really reduced the home run rate last year, dropped it by almost 1 full home run per 9 from 2023, finished with a 3.2 F-WAR overall. Now, taking a look at the advanced metrics here, we see that he had good velocity, he limited the average exit velocity, he limited the barrels as well. Did get a good amount of swing and miss, but he needs to do a little bit better at limiting the walks and trying to get guys to swing out of the zone a bit more. Now, a big problem with Gore last year was when he fell behind in the count, he really got hit hard. So I think that's going to be something that he improves for this coming year. The fact that he has good stuff, and if he can just work out just the pitch selection in certain counts, then I think he's going to be a lot better, and I think he's going to keep taking a big step forward. I say he finishes in the top 10. For the Orioles, I think Tomoyuki Sugano ends up being a big surprise. Now, a lot of people are concerned with the Orioles rotation after losing Corbin Burns, but I think Sugano ends up stepping up in a big way this year. Now, he's coming over from Japan at 35 years old. He doesn't have the stuff and the velo like Roki Sasaki, for example, so a lot of people aren't very high on him, but I think he does a lot of things well that are going to translate to the major league level. He throws a lot of strikes. He's a control artist. He has a lot of pitches to play with. He just knows how to work the batters. He's very smart at pitching, kind of like Zach Greinke in a way, like Greg Maddux, for example. He's that kind of a pitcher. And he had success this spring, an ERA at 3.00 over 5 games and 15 innings pitched. I think Sugano, also the fact that batters aren't really used to him, I think he's going to end up having a lot of success, at least in the first half. And this is a guy that did very well in Japan last year, had an ERA under 2. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. For the Padres, I think they trade Dylan Cease. Now, Cease has been in the rumor mill this offseason, and he is going to be a free agent after this coming year. He's been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball for a while now. He's going to get himself a fat contract next offseason. And with the Padres having concerns with their payroll over the last couple of years, not a lot of people are expecting them to retain him. So I think at some point this year, they are going to trade him. I'm not very high on the Padres this year. They still have a lot of talent there, especially in the lineup. You know, with Fernando Tatis Jr., you got Jackson Merrill, you got Manny Machado, you know, you still have Cease and Michael King in the rotation, still got some good arms in the bullpen. I just think with the competition in the National League, I just think the Padres are going to be on the outside looking in, and if they're a few games out, I can see them moving in by the deadline to get back some younger players for the organization. For the Phillies, I think Andrew Painter debuts this year. Now, we got Tommy John a couple of years ago. The Phillies have been very slow with working him back, but I think this is the year we see Andrew Painter. As of right now, he is the number 8 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. There is a lot to like with this guy. He's got a ton of velocity, nasty slider, has a curveball, changeup to go along with it. Both are very good pitches. This guy is going to be very good. I mean, go back to what he was doing here a couple of years ago in 2022. Over 100 innings pitched, 22 starts, ERA at a 1.56, FIP at at a 2.02, 13 and a half strikeouts per nine, 2 walks per nine, a half a home run per nine. This guy is going to be absolutely disgusting. I think he'll be helping out the Phillies in some way, shape, or form this year. For the Pirates, I think Paul Skenes wins the Cy Young. I know this might be an easy prediction, but I think it's a slam dunk. This guy is off the charts. I mean, take a look at the numbers from last year. 23 starts, 133 innings pitched, ERA at a 1.96, FIP at a 2.44, good amount of strikeouts, 11 and a half per nine, 2 walks per nine, under home run per nine. In his rookie season, my goodness, now take a look at where he ranked. He was 10th overall in FWAR last year with just 23 starts. I think this guy is absolutely going to win the Cy Young this year, and he added a couple of pitches this past offseason. This guy is just going to be bonkers this year. For the Rangers, I think Wyatt Langford ends up being an MVP candidate. Now, overall, he had a pretty solid rookie season last year, hitting .253 with a 325 on base, a 415 slugging, a 110 WRC plus, 16 homers, a 2.9 FWAR overall, but it's how he finished that was very impressive. He was second in offense in the month of September, only behind Shohei Ohtani. He did incredible down the stretch, hitting .300, a 386 on base, a 610 slugging, 8 homers, 7 stolen bases, and the advanced metrics looked very good with him last year. The expected numbers looked good. Batted ball profile looked pretty good. Bat speed was great. His plate discipline was pretty solid for the most part. I think year 2, we're going to see Langford take a massive step forward. For the Rays, I think they end up trading Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz by the deadline. Now, there's a lot of good things about the Rays this year. I just don't know if they're fully there yet. I feel like they're about a year away from seriously contending. But again, there are things to like. Junior Caminero, I think, is going to be an absolute beast. I think Christopher Morel is a very intriguing bat. Good advanced metrics in the past. Let's see if the Rays can tap into some of that. You got a lot of good young pitching here in the rotation. Hopefully, Shane McClanahan is good to go. It looks like he avoided a major arm injury. Looks like it was just a nerve issue in the tricep, so he'll be back eventually. But you got some other good arms here, Pepio, Bradley, Boz, but again, I just don't know if this team is fully there. So I expect that they're going to move Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz by the deadline. Good bats that can help out contenders down the stretch. For the Red Sox, I think Rafael Devers hits 40 home runs for the first time in his career. Now, one of the bigger storylines of this past spring training was what was going on at third base with the Red Sox. They signed Alex Bregman, who's clearly the better third baseman, over Rafi. And at spring training, they asked him if he would be okay with moving off a third and DHing, and he said no. But it looks like he's warmed up to being a DH moving forward, and I think that's going to be the best spot for him because the bat is where the value lies with Rafi Devers. Now, last year had a pretty solid year, hit .272, 354 on the on-base, slugging at a .516, 134 WRC plus, but he ran into some injuries that cut his season short. That's been a problem with him over the last couple of years, staying healthy, but I think being at DH, that's going to make him more durable for the entire year. And if you go back to 2021, he had 38 home runs that year, but again, I think just focusing on the bat, being more healthy, I think he ends up hitting 40 home runs for the first time. For the Reds, I think Matt McLain ends up being a sneaky MVP candidate. Now, he missed all of last year after getting shoulder surgery, but go back to 2023. He was very good over 89 games, hit .290, a 357 on base, a .507 slugging, a 127 WRC plus, 16 homers over 89 games, had a 3.1 FWAR over that time. Imagine what he could do over a full season. This guy's going to give you a bit of power. He's going to give you some speed. He'll play some defense out there as well. I think he's going to be a pretty underrated player this year. For the Rockies, I think they end up finishing top 15 in runs scored. Now, when it comes to the pitching with the Rockies, it's absolutely garbage, but the lineup, I think, can be pretty intriguing. Last year, they finished 20th overall in runs scored, and when I'm taking a look at the lineup here, you got some pretty solid bats. Michael Toglia had a good amount of home runs last year. Ryan McMahon, is going to be solid. Bretton Doyle showed a lot of good things last year. They just traded for Tyler Freeman. Let's see if he ends up getting a bit more playing time here. Jordan Beck, I think, is an underrated prospect. And Chris Bryant, if he can finally stay healthy, we've seen what he can do in the past when he's healthy. I think he's definitely going to be a contributor if he can stay on the field. So I think in the end, the Rockies, they're going to end up having a pretty good offense. I say they finish in the top 15. For the Royals, I think they trade for an outfielder by the deadline. I think the Royals are going to be solid yet again this year. They had a very fun run last year, but I feel like they're lacking a bat in this lineup. But when I'm taking a look at the outfield, I see Hunter Renfroe, MJ Melendez, and Kyle Isbell. All those guys offensively last year were not very good. I think they make an upgrade at some point. I can see them calling the White Sox about Luis Robert. I think it would be a very good fit here. I think they need another bat here, and I think they're going to get an outfielder at some point. For the Tigers, I think Spencer Torkelson has a bounce-back year. Now, ever since getting drafted number 1 overall back in 2020, things have been very up and down for Torkelson. Last year, he really struggled. After hitting over 30 home runs a couple of years ago, only hit 219, a 295 on base, a 374 slugging, a 92 WRC plus, 10 homers. But I think there's some things that are looking up for Torkelson. Last year, yeah, there's a lot of blues here, but the bat speed still looked pretty good, ranked in the 77th percentile, and he was still pretty disciplined at the plate. Didn't chase outside the zone really all that much, ranked in the 84th percentile. But this past offseason, he worked on some things mechanically with his stance, and you're seeing much better numbers this spring training, hitting 340, a 389 on base, a 680 on the slugging, 5 homers over 19 games. I think Torkelson is going to be a lot better offensively this year. For the Twins, I think Pablo Lopez comes up in trade rumors. Now, I'm not too high on the Twins this year. Yes, they do have a lot of talent with guys like Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis. You got Lopez and Ryan Bailey Ober in the rotation. You got Duran at the back end of the bullpen. But there's a lot of injury risk with this team. Correa, Buxton, Royce Lewis. I mean, these guys never seem to stay healthy overall, and they don't have a lot of depth within the organization, especially guys that can come up and contribute at the major league level. You got Emmanuel Rodriguez, one of the top prospects in the game, but even he's an injury risk. So I don't know. I'm not feeling the depth of the pitching staff very much. So I feel like the Twins, they're going to kind of just drag a little bit this year. And I think Lopez, who has been a workhorse kind of a guy, one of the more solid starting pitchers in the game, I think he comes up in rumors this year. He was even coming up in trade rumors this past offseason. For the White Sox, I think Luis Robert finally gets traded. Now, last season, he was rumored to get moved before the deadline, but he ended up getting a hip flexor injury, missed a lot of time in the first half, and his numbers weren't very good overall. He also came up this past offseason as a possible trade candidate, but because of the injury history, I think teams just want to see if he's going to be able to stay healthy. I think he will for the first half of this year. I think he'll end up hitting pretty well overall, and I think he's going to be a bat that teams would love to add to their lineup. I've already mentioned him a couple of times in this video. Maybe the Astros at some point, maybe the Royals, a team in division, can make a phone call. Either way, I think Robert has a bounce back year, and I think he gets moved. And last but not least, for the Yankees, I think Will Warren ends up being this year's Luis Gil. Now, Luis Gil stepped up in a big way last year after Garrett Cole ended up missing time in the beginning of the year. And I think Will Warren does the same thing this year with Garrett Cole after the year after getting Tommy John. Now, with Warren, he got hit hard last year in a cup of coffee with the Yankees, had an ERA over 10. But there's a lot to like with Warren. When you take a look at the stuff plus, he had an above-average fastball, had an above-average sinker, had an above-average cutter as well. Right around the league average on the slider, and he gets a lot of strikeouts. You know, when you take a look at the strikeouts per 9 last year, over 22 2/3 innings. He had 11 and a half strikeouts per 9, 4 walks per 9. He definitely could reduce that, but he was getting hit hard, giving up the home runs last year. I think that's something he's going to clean up. He did have a pretty decent spring training overall. He got knocked around a little bit in his last couple of starts, but the strikeouts were looking good. It looked like the walks were a lot better. He just has to figure out the home run ball. He's got to stop leaving these meatballs over the middle of the plate. But I think Will Warren ends up stepping up in a big way for the Yankees this year, and I think he helps out their rotation. But everyone, those are my predictions for each team for 2025. Let me know your predictions down below in the comments. I would love to see what you all got. But everyone, that's all I got for right now. If you can on the way out, hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new. We are so close to 50,000 subscribers. I can smell it. But everyone, that's all I got for now. I'll talk to you next time.